The day I walked away from Daniel Ross, I thought the worst part was already behind me. I thought leaving a man I once loved would hurt for a while, then slowly fade into peace. I thought distance would protect me. I thought the army base, with its rules, gates, officers, and chain of command, would keep my life steady. But I was wrong. Some people do not see goodbye as an ending. They see it as a wound to their pride, a challenge, and a reason to show the darkest part of themselves. My name is Elena Mackey, and at that time I was serving as a legal officer on an army base in Missouri. I was 29, disciplined, focused, and proud of the career I had built. Every morning, I put on my uniform and reminded myself I had earned my place. I had worked hard through law school, then harder in a military environment where people did not always expect a soft-spoken woman to be firm. Soldiers came to my office when their lives were messy, and I gave them calm, legal guidance. To everyone else, I looked strong. I crossed the base with polished boots, straight shoulders, and a calm face. But behind that face, my private life had begun to crack. For almost 2 years, I had loved Daniel, a respected soldier on the same base. He was confident, charming, and spoke in a way that made every promise sound safe. He made me laugh after long days, brought coffee when I worked late, and told me, "Elena, you're different. You understand me." I believed him. What I did not understand then was that control can arrive dressed like care. At first, Daniel's attention felt sweet. He wanted to know if I got home safely, who I ate lunch with, and why I took 30 minutes to answer a message. I told myself he was protective. I told myself deep love sometimes looked intense. But slowly, the questions became pressure. The pressure became arguments. The arguments became fear. He did not like when I spent time with other officers, stayed late at the legal office, or visited Mara on weekends. If I wore lipstick, he asked who I was trying to impress. If I laughed at another soldier's joke, his mood changed. If I asked for space, he said I was abandoning him. Every normal part of my life became something I had to explain. I did not realize how small my world had become until I canceled dinner with Mara for the 3rd time. She called and asked, "Elena, are you safe with him?" I wanted to laugh it off, but the words caught in my throat. Deep inside, I knew the answer was no longer simple. That night, Daniel came over after a tense day of silence. He sat in my living room, still in uniform, jaw tight, hands folded as if he was holding himself back. He asked why I had been distant. I told him I was tired. He said I was lying. I told him I needed space. His face changed, not loudly, not in a way anyone outside that room would notice, but I saw it. The softness left his eyes, and what replaced it made my heart go cold. "You do not get to build a life with me," he said quietly, and then walk away like I am nothing. I told him I cared about him, but I could not keep living in fear of his reactions. I said love should not feel like walking through a room full of glass, afraid one wrong step would cut me. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he stood, came close enough that I could smell rain on his jacket, and whispered, "One day, you will understand what you did." That was the moment I knew I had to leave. Not after another apology, not after one more chance. With shaking hands and a voice that barely stayed steady, I said, "Daniel, I cannot do this anymore. We are done." He stared at me like I had taken something from him. Not like a man losing love, but like a man losing control. I expected him to shout. Instead, he smiled in a way that made my skin feel cold and said, "You think this is over because you said it is?" I opened the door and asked him to leave. For a moment, I thought he would refuse. Then he walked out slowly, calmly, as if he was leaving a meeting instead of a relationship. When the door closed, I locked it, leaned against it, and cried. For the first time in months, my apartment was silent. No questions, no accusations, no heavy footsteps, just quiet. I thought maybe this was what freedom felt like at first. Not joy, not excitement, just silence. But Daniel did not see our breakup as an ending. He saw it as a mission. In his mind, I had become the enemy. For the first few days, everything stayed quiet. Too quiet. I woke early, went to base, answered emails, reviewed case files, and tried to act normal. The Army can make the world look ordered even when your heart is falling apart. Soldiers crossed the yard. Officers moved between buildings. The flag rose every morning. But inside me, something felt wrong, like the air before a storm. Then the messages started. At first, they were soft. Daniel said he missed me, could not sleep, and was sorry for everything. He wrote long paragraphs about how I was the only person who had ever understood him. More than once, I almost answered, but every time my thumb moved toward the keyboard, I remembered his face on that final night, so I did not reply. After that, the messages changed. Sadness turned into anger. He said I had embarrassed him, used him, and thought my position in the legal office made me untouchable. One message said, "Everyone will know who you really are." Another said, "You will not get to walk away clean." My stomach tightened every time my phone lit up. I blocked his number, but he used new numbers, new accounts, and names I did not recognize. It felt like he was reaching through every wall I tried to build. One rainy morning, I found a folded note under the windshield wiper of my car. The paper was damp. At first, I thought it was a parking notice. Then I opened it and saw one sentence: "You still belong to the story I choose to tell." I stood there in the rain while soldiers walked past laughing. Nobody knew my whole body had gone cold. That evening, I told Mara everything. I showed her the messages, the note, and told her what Daniel had said after the breakup. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and held my hand. "Elena," she said, "this is not heartbreak. This is control." Hearing someone else say it made the truth land harder. The next morning, I reported it. I went to my commanding officer with printed screenshots, the note, dates, times, and details. As a legal officer, I knew documentation mattered. Memory could be questioned, but evidence had its own voice. My commander listened carefully, yet I felt the weight of the system around me. Daniel was respected. Daniel had friends. Daniel had a clean public image, and I was the woman who had ended the relationship. Some people believed me right away. Others were polite but distant. A few acted as if I was dragging personal drama into a professional space. I could feel their doubt in the pauses, the shifted eyes, and the careful words. One officer said, "Breakups can be emotional," as if that explained notes on cars, hidden accounts, and threats sent at midnight. I swallowed my anger and stayed calm. Then came the photo that changed my fear into something deeper. It was just after midnight when my phone lit up. The message came from an unknown number. It was a photo of my apartment door. My exact door. My welcome mat. The small scratch near the handle. The hallway light above it. No words, just the picture. I stared at it, unable to breathe properly. My curtains were closed. My room was dark. Suddenly, my own home no longer felt like mine. I called Mara first. Then I called base security. I sat with all the lights on, listening to every sound in the hallway. Security checked the area and told me to stay with a friend. Mara picked me up, and the moment I got into her car, I broke down. I was tired of being brave, while someone else quietly destroyed my peace. For the next few weeks, my life became smaller. I changed my route to work, stopped jogging alone, asked friends to walk me to my car, and checked my locks again and again. Even at work, I looked over my shoulder. The base that once felt safe now felt full of corners where he might be waiting. And then, he appeared. It was a gray afternoon when I left the legal office carrying folders. The parking lot was half empty. I saw him before I reached my car. Daniel stood beside it, arms crossed, expression calm. Too calm. My first instinct was to turn around and go back inside, but I forced myself to keep walking because I did not want him to see me run. My hand tightened around my keys until the metal pressed into my palm. "Elena," he said, like we were meeting for coffee, "you are embarrassing me." I stopped several feet away. "Move away from my car, Daniel," he tilted his head. "So now I am the enemy?" "No," I said. "You are someone I asked to stay away from me." His face hardened for 1 second, then he smiled without warmth. "You think the army will protect you from me?" Those words followed me for days. I reported the encounter. Security reviewed the parking lot cameras. My commander requested that Daniel be formally warned to keep his distance. On paper, things were moving. But fear does not wait for paperwork. It follows you into the shower, sits beside you at dinner, and wakes you at 2 a.m. to check the door again. Then the betrayal became public. Daniel began telling people on base that I was trying to ruin his career because he would not take me back. He said I had used my legal position to threaten him. He said I was unstable, bitter, and hungry for attention. The stories moved quietly, like smoke. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. People who once greeted me warmly gave short nods. A soldier I had helped months earlier looked away. That hurt in a way I did not expect. Daniel's anger had a source, but the silence of others felt like a second betrayal. It made me question myself. Maybe I had made it worse by reporting him. That is how fear works. It makes you doubt your right to be protected. One night, I sat in Mara's guest room with my laptop open and every message printed beside me. I read everything again, from the first apology to the last threat. Sadness turned into something colder and clearer. Daniel was not only trying to scare me, he was trying to rewrite the story before I could tell the truth. So I stopped begging people to understand. I stopped explaining myself in quiet corners. I stopped hoping the truth would defend itself. I began organizing everything like a case file. Dates, times, screenshots, witnesses, security reports, the photo of my apartment door, the note from my car, the parking lot footage request. Every detail mattered. If Daniel wanted a story, I would bring evidence. A few days later, Mara told me something that made everything click. She had overheard 2 soldiers outside the cafeteria. One said Daniel had been asking about my schedule, not in a casual way. He wanted to know when I arrived, when I left, and whether I was still staying at my apartment. Fear rose again, but this time it did not swallow me. This time, it sharpened me. I requested a formal review. I submitted my documentation and asked for the matter to be handled through proper channels. Every form made me relive the fear. Every conversation forced me to speak about things I wished I could forget. But with each step, a part of myself came back. Daniel had tried to make me feel powerless. Every page I added to that file reminded me I still had a voice. The night before the hearing, I barely slept. I sat on Mara's guest bed, staring at my dress uniform on the closet door. Mara sat beside me and said, "You do not have to prove you are perfect, Elena. You only have to tell the truth." I was afraid of facing him and not being believed. But beneath the fear, quiet strength whispered, "You survived this far. Now stand up." The hearing took place on a rainy Thursday morning. The base looked washed in gray. I walked toward the administrative building with my folder against my chest, feeling every step in my legs. Rain dotted my uniform. My hair was pulled back tightly. My face looked calm, but inside, my heart was beating so hard it felt like a warning. When I entered the room, Daniel was already there, straight-backed in his dress uniform, polished and composed. For a second, looking at him hurt. Not because I wanted him, but because I remembered who I thought he was. The man who brought coffee, held my hand, and made me feel chosen before he made me feel trapped. The officers asked us to sit. Daniel did not look afraid. He looked confident, almost bored, as if this was another misunderstanding he could charm his way through. For a moment, doubt touched me again. Then, I felt the folder in my hands. The evidence was there. The truth was there. And I was there. The officer in charge asked me to speak first. I stood, opened my folder, and took a breath. My voice shook slightly when I began, but I did not stop. I explained how the relationship had changed. I described the control, the accusations, the pressure, and the fear. I did not exaggerate. I simply told the story as it happened. Then I gave them the messages. The apologies that turned into blame, the blame that turned into warnings, and the warnings that turned into threats against my peace. Daniel shifted in his chair when the first messages were read aloud. His face stayed calm, but his jaw tightened. Then I showed them the note from my car. I explained where I found it and when. I showed them the report I filed after receiving the photo of my apartment door. Base security confirmed my call had been logged and that patrol had responded. Every fact built a wall between me and his lies. Then came the parking lot footage. It showed Daniel standing near my car before I left the office. It did not capture every word, but it captured enough. Him waiting, me stopping several feet away, and the distance I tried to keep. His claim that he had simply run into me was not true. In that room, truth did not need to shout. It only needed to be seen. Daniel tried to speak over one of the officers. He said the messages were taken out of context. He said I was emotional. He said he only wanted to talk. But the more he explained, the more his control slipped. His voice grew sharper. His calm face began to crack. The room saw what I had seen behind closed doors. Justice does not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it arrives through printed pages, timestamps, and the courage to keep speaking. Then, Mara was called in. She told them what I had shared with her, what she had seen, and what she had overheard about Daniel asking questions about my schedule. Another soldier confirmed he had heard similar questions. Daniel looked at him with betrayal in his eyes, as if loyalty meant protecting him from the truth. But loyalty to a lie is not loyalty. It is silence wearing a uniform. By the end of the hearing, the room had changed. People who had doubted me now sat quietly, looking at the evidence. Daniel no longer looked like a respected soldier with a broken heart. He looked like a man whose own actions had followed him into the light. He was removed from certain duties pending a formal investigation. A military protective order was issued, and he was told to have no contact with me. I thought I would feel victorious, but I did not. At first, I felt empty. Then relief came, deep and shaking. I walked out into the rain, and for the first time in weeks, I did not look over my shoulder right away. Mara waited outside under an umbrella. She did not ask what happened. She just opened her arms, and I stepped into them. I cried there, not because I was weak, but because I had been strong for too long. In the weeks that followed, Daniel faced consequences. His reputation changed. People who had believed his stories began to understand the truth. Some apologized to me. Some did not. I learned to accept both. Daniel's career, the thing he had used like armor, was damaged by his own choices. He tried to make me look unstable, but his own actions exposed him. People call stories like this revenge. But I do not think revenge is always about hurting someone back. Sometimes revenge is surviving what was meant to break you. Sometimes it is refusing to let another person write your story. Sometimes it is walking into a room with trembling hands and still telling the truth clearly enough that every lie begins to fall apart. I did not win because Daniel lost. I won because I got my voice back. I won because I stopped hiding. I won because I learned that fear can live inside you and still not be stronger than you. For a long time, I thought strength meant never shaking, never crying, and never needing help. I was wrong. Strength was calling Mara at midnight. Strength was reporting the first note. Strength was saving every message when I wanted to delete them and forget. Strength was asking people to listen even when I was afraid they would not. Months later, I accepted a new assignment away from that base. On my last morning, I walked past the legal office one final time. I thought about the woman I had been when I met Daniel, trusting, hopeful, and willing to explain away every warning sign because she wanted love to be enough. Then I thought about the woman I had become. Still soft, still kind, still able to love, but no longer silent. Before I left, Mara hugged me tightly and said, "You are going to be okay." For the first time, I believed it. Not because the past had disappeared, but because it no longer owned me. The fear had not vanished overnight, but it had lost the power to control every step I took. I had a new assignment, a new apartment, and a chance to build a life where peace did not feel like something I had to beg for. If there is one thing I learned, it is this: love should never make you afraid to leave. A person who truly loves you will not punish you for choosing peace. They will not turn your silence into guilt, your boundaries into betrayal, or your kindness into a cage. And when someone tries to destroy your name because they can no longer control your heart, the truth may become the strongest protection you have. Daniel wanted me broken. He wanted me doubting myself, hiding from the world, and carrying the blame for what he had done. Instead, I became my own witness. I became my own protector. I became the woman who stood in a room full of doubt and let the truth speak. When the truth finally stood beside me, every lie he had built began to fall. That was not the kind of revenge people expect. There was no shouting, no cruel payback, and no dramatic scene. Just evidence. Courage, consequences, peace, and in the end, that was the justice he never saw coming.